Okay, so now we are up to colour and ice. Welcome back. Hope you've followed all the steps so far. So now that the blanket is all tied, the circles are tied, let's start from the beginning. So a king size cotton blanket, soaked in soda ash, 30 minutes in soda ash, then spun out in the washing machine, brought out onto the table, folded in half, and then we did our circles, and I added to this couple of love hearts and some nice goddess shapes and stuff, but that's a little bit more technical and I'll show you that in another video. So this is the completed blanket tied. Now what you're going to need is a very large container. This is mine. It's pretty big. It's like, you know, arm's length, so it's quite large. You're going to need a very large container for something this big. Your colours, of course, are all chakra colours. A container just to put your spoons in when you're done. And normally when I'm doing this, I would have a mask on and I would have my fan on in the shed. But because I'm talking to you guys, I'm not going to have the fan on or my mask, otherwise you're not going to hear or see anything. But please remember to wear your mask when you're doing it, because the powders can be dangerous if you breathe them in. So what I do is, for chakra, your main concern is getting your circles to the top, because you want to be able to put the colour on the circles. When you're doing this in a sheet, you will need to mark the top to say where your first colour goes. But because this is a blanket, it can go any way, so I'm not really concerned which one I dye first. So I try to pick up the circles and whatever else I have tied up so that that's basically on top. We get our container and then I literally just throw it in. So it's all squashed and all over each other. That's where you're going to get your nice patterns. I know it's a bit hard to see, but let's see if we can get you on a bit more of an angle. There we go. So these are the bits that we've tied, and they're all going to sit up the top, and the rest of the blanket is just all scrunched. And what I do from here is really just a matter of trying to get those circles to sit flat and separated slightly so that I can get the colours on them. Sometimes they'll sit a bit funny, but it is just a matter of working the material, being patient, letting the material do what it wants to do sometimes. Right, so there you can see there's only a couple of little spots that haven't filled, but other than that, that's how I put it into the container. So then we start colour. Now I basically do my circles and then all those other colours I just put all around. So let's start with our amethyst. My dyes are mostly all Dharma dyes and Jacquard product dyes. So just a bit on your spoon. What you're going to do is you're just going to put that amethyst colour on that circle. Now because this is a cotton, it's quite a good thick cotton, you don't really need too much dye, but you can see I've given it a pretty good cover. So keep your spoon and your container with your lid together. You don't want to be putting a different colour lid back on the wrong colour. Sometimes you can get a bit of colour transfer in your dyes. So that was amethyst. This is going to be indigo blue. Same thing, just a little bit on your spoon. Don't overdo it, otherwise you can have an accident. And the same thing. Now, too, when I do this, I don't actually worry too much about if I spill the colour over the side, because I'm actually going to cover the rest of this piece with all of those colours anyway. The main thing I'm concerned with is keeping the circles separate. Right, so that's indigo blue. Now we're going to do glacier blue. Same thing. Just a little bit on your spoon. Try really hard not to get that other circle. It can be a little difficult, but it's all good. Just try the best that you can. You want to go all the way around it. Okay, now we're going to use Kelly green. Now, what I can see at the moment is that the circle next to the Kelly green isn't quite far enough away. So I'm going to need to actually manipulate that one a little bit as I go around and try and pull the underneath, which really isn't ideal when you've already started, but that's what tie-dye is. I think that will be okay. I'm just going to lift that piece up. I'm not too worried about the blues mixing, but okay, so you can see I've just sort of manipulated that a bit so there's a little bit of space. Now we can go back and just fill those little gaps. Green tends to be a pretty strong colour in dye, so less sometimes is more. Right, so we get that one done. Now, next is, for my yellow today, I'm using daffodil. I find yellow can be a bit clumpy, and I haven't put a trick with dyes that are a bit clumpy. Get yourself a stocking, put a bit of rice in it, and chuck it in your dye, and the rice will actually absorb the excess moisture. Right, so a little bit of yellow. And next, my orange, I'm using deep orange. So again, just working your circles, trying to keep them a bit separate. And again, look, I don't think there's no real mistakes in tie-dye. I mean, it does depend how particular you are about, where the colour spreads, whether, oh dear, you know, whether you wanted colour to mix. I don't really tend to be too fussy about it. I think tie-dye is a variation anyway, so whatever comes out, comes out. So our last colour for the circles is scarlet. So again, I'm just gonna manipulate that one a little bit, bring that so the dye will sit into it, and just sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. Just a little bit down in there still. Right, so there is all of the circles dyed in the chakra colours. Now the fun part is that you can now just get these colours and put them anywhere to make this the chakra colours all over the blanket. What I tend to do when I'm doing this blanket is that I will actually start the reverse. So the red started here, so I'll start the red over there. The amethyst was there, so I'll start the amethyst here. So I just sort of tend to run the colours in reverse. So in between now each one of these, I'll just randomly place colour, and that will give us a nice variation. All those chakra colours will now come out. So again, we go back and we go, so our orange is over here, so we're going to put orange on this side, orange down on this side, a little bit in here. The other thing I'm really not worried about is if there's some white left in this blanket, because I think sometimes that actually looks really cool. Right, so yellow's here. You sometimes can run into trouble with the middle colours, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put orange all the way over this side in just little bits, and then down the bottom on this one on this side. So the actual colour transfer will be yellow all the way down the side of the blanket once the ice hits it. So then we get to our green. Now again, you're gonna end up with this greens there, so you don't really want to put any green there. So then we just come back over to here and we put green down this side. So that green's not really with any of the other green circle. And we transfer the other part of green down the bottom here. Okay, so now glacier blue. Glacier blue is such a pretty sky colour. So I'm actually going to run that right next to our bright orange and our yellow. And then I'm actually going to run it along the edges of the circles. Now this time I am actually using quite a bit. Glacier blue, you will need to use a little bit more powder than normal. I just find that it can be look a bit like light if you don't put enough of the powder. Okay, now we're going to go back to indigo. Remember that indigo blue is a very dark blue, so it depends whether you want this to be bright or whether you want this to have lots of dark patches in it, because the other thing you need to remember is that when the muck comes down the bottom, if someone accidentally touches this or it gets bumped, you're going to get a mucky bottom. Luckily, everyone in my family knows if they touch my pieces, they all die. Not literally, but they get in a lot of trouble because it takes so much effort to do these. So I sort of want the dark blue to contrast. So I'm actually going to put dark blue in between the yellow and the green. Where I ran the glacier blue along here, I'm now going to run a dark blue line down next to the glacier blue and into the yellow on the other side. So get that one in there. The other line we'll do from blues into yellow is along here, and we're just not going to do too much dark blue here, just there, and then another small line just around there. Right, okay, so our last colour is amethyst. Now remember that actually started over there, so we're going to put that here and here, and then that is going to break up those blues, greens and yellows. So our amethyst now goes in the section that's left here. Remembering you're gonna need a good coverage here. because your blanket is actually quite thick there. And then we're going to put some here. Okay, that's colour. Now I'll go and get the ice and I will show you how I dump a whole heap of ice on it. Okay, so let's look at ice. Move this out the way. This is my ice. I actually make all my own ice. I probably have about 50 ice trays in the freezer, and I just constantly am doing ice trays all the time. As soon as they're set, they get put in here. This holds about, it's almost equivalent to 1.5 bags of ice that you would get at your servo or your supermarket, wherever you get it from. But I make my own. It's just easier, and it's always, my freezer's always filled with it. And you can see these big boys take quite a bit of ice. I've actually got this and another smaller container with ice in it as well if we need it. So, to be honest, something this big, you know, you can be a little bit worried about ice jumping, but with something this big, there really is no other way to do it other than that. So we get all that in and sorted where we want them to sit, and then we go and get our smaller ice and start to fill all the little gaps. You'll find your smaller ice usually tends to fall down the sides. So any that are not being used inside, we actually use to fill gaps. Right, we'll go get the other container and we'll start filling the rest of the gaps. Again, I'm just going to pour this on top, and what will happen is as you slowly manipulate your ice, it will naturally go into the gaps. Like I said, with a piece like this, it's pretty hard to avoid ice jump, but you do your best. So there we have it. It's covered in ice. This will now sit until the ice is completely melted. This piece will probably take 4 days. I would say for the amount of ice that I need this to have, this could need another batch of ice tomorrow. So we'll see how we go. But other than that, that is a complete ice dye. This is how I dye all the time. Later on, I'll actually do some more videos on some other pieces that I do, and we'll look at putting the way we put different dyes on. So we'll do a dye over the ice, we'll do some dyeing on a rack, and we'll do some more different patterns. So I hope everyone enjoyed that one, and jump on to Bridgie's Universe of Tie-Dye and Magic. Give it a like and a share. Got any questions? Put it in the comments, guys. Thanks, bye.